All right, you guys, here we go. Brand new Honda Accord. It's that time. This is the 11th generation Accord, 2023 Honda Accord. Honda would like you to believe this is an all-new vehicle. It's largely the same underneath. Keep that on the down low. We'll get into those details. We'll go for a POV drive and show you guys what's up. Let's get into it. This is it. This is a little bit closer to the heart for me because I did own a Honda Accord. I believe it was a 5th gen. I want to say it's the 5th gen. It was a 97. So to me, the last small Accord for sure. One of the last good looking Accords in my opinion, maybe until now. I guess I should say if you're looking at it from kind of a youthful perspective. But so 2.7 inches longer here. The wheelbase, however, is the same. So handling characteristics have stayed largely the same here. Most of that length went into the nose. As we can see, that's a very long overhang here, and the lights actually extend, wow, almost to the wheel there. But unfortunately, when we come around back here, there is this kind of sloped back look, a very Audi-esque look back here. It hasn't resulted actually in any more cargo space. So most of that length has just gone to the front and kind of gone to making the car look a lot different. In the rear, start out here, I'm not sure why they've got rid of any exhaust pipes. The rear taillights, so I put up an Instagram story last week. I asked you guys at night, just with the taillights on, what the car looked like. And you guys all guessed Audis. You guys guessed Audis, one of you guessed a Toyota Crown. So it does look very European. As you guys can see, the Honda badge is a lot smaller here. We've got hybrid touring. This is the top spec here in Canada. Starting price for the 2023 Accord is $38,000 Canadian. Here as tested, $46,000 Canadian. Top spec. And we'll get into the power unit in a second here. The front end, see, I think it looks better. This has been a lot more polarizing than I would have expected. I've been on a few of the forums and seen your comments on what the car looks like. A lot of you guys are like, it's boring now. I mean, I like it a lot better. It definitely has a little bit of Mustang in the headlights. It's a lot lower. It has Acura in it for sure. They've definitely blurred the line between Acura and Honda, just the way the headlights are shaped. There, but because this is the touring, it gets a lot of these accents. Like this would be black on the sport model, and same with the mirrors here. Those would be black on the sport model, but here they are body color. One of the things I mentioned in the previous Accord was there was a very aggressive kind of line that kind of came up here, and then met up with the bottom of the taillights. That's completely gone. They've really eliminated any extra lines here that could get in the way of just making your eyes focus on what they're supposed to be focusing on, which I guess just is the car as a whole. Let's pop the hood real quick. They've got rid of the turbocharged 2-liter engine, which put out quite a bit of horsepower. So in fact, the top Accord model has less torque than it did the prior generation. But of course, this hybrid model makes 204 combined horsepower, 247 pound-feet of torque, and that is up from the previous generation hybrid. So there is a little bit more power here. Overall, I think it looks good. I get what they're going for. I completely get the sloped back look here. You do get a wing if you go with the sport model. You also get the 17-inch wheels versus these 19s. If you go with the 1.5-liter turbo, which is the base non-hybrid engine. It is worthy to note also in the US, you can get the hybrid version of the vehicle, but with options like the 17-inch wheels, which actually increases the range. So there is a model that is available in the US that is not available in Canada that gets more, not more range, better fuel economy. They've got rid of the fake wood trim on the dash here. Lots of soft touch leather here. We'll get into the interior details in a second. Okay, so you might notice down here they got rid of the buttons for park, reverse, neutral, drive, and they've replaced it with a traditional gear lever. This is so much better. And of course, the drive mode selector down here now is an actual drive mode selector, not just an eco button and a sport button. And then they've changed the symbol for the EV only button. Now this isn't a plug-in hybrid, it's all fully self-contained here. So it doesn't have like a rated EV only range, but if you do have a very full battery there, as you can see on the left, then you'd be able to drive in EV only mode, which we are taking off in right now. We'll change the right side of the all digital gauge cluster. Finally, Honda. They answered a lot of my questions. They fixed a lot of the gripes I had with the previous generation here. And one of those was the instrument cluster was half digital and half analog, which works on something like, oh, I don't know, a 992, 911. It does not work, did not work on the Accord. So I'm happy to say that that is gone here. So it's a 3-motor hybrid system here. Effectively, we have 2 electric motors and a gasoline-powered, naturally aspirated 2-liter inline 4. EV-only mode. Right now, we are coasting. It has regen braking, so effectively, anytime you're off the throttle, generally speaking, it's going to just be using those regen brakes to recharge the battery. If we begin coasting, very low throttle, we can coast EV only and the engine is not operating. We give it a little bit more throttle, and then what happens is the engine actually sends power to a generator motor, which sends power to the electric motors. And that's what makes the Accord be able to have such great throttle feel. It feels like an EV, it feels like continuous and instantaneous torque. Under certain scenarios, it will, however, be directly connected to the front wheels via a clutch pack, right? You don't really feel that. It's still very seamlessly connected because the torque is integrated with those electric motors in the way it's sent to the wheels. And then, of course, if you're just cruising and you're largely just using electric power, the gasoline engine will just basically be charging the battery. We get a few more regen braking settings here as well, 6 of them, which we control, of course, via the paddles here. Does attempt to simulate gear shifts as well. We'll go into sport mode here, and that will tighten up the steering a little bit. What we do have new for this generation, of course, is an individual mode. So aside from sport, which will tighten up the steering, like I mentioned, and the throttle a little bit, and of course, economy mode. Individual mode, we can now customize our drive mode. So powertrain, of course, we can change normal, econ, sport. Steering, I like to have in sport, and then your gauge cluster, which doesn't really change the design, just the colors a little bit. You can change that. That's new, and you do not get that in the base model. So the Accord's not available in all-wheel drive, which I guess is just to keep the costs down. That's not a huge miss for me, especially for the money. I think this car, generally speaking, is good value. I'm going to get into a couple of the misses, but while we're behind these trucks here, let's get into big infotainment changes here. Like I said, the screen here, digital gauge cluster here, way better. I can finally put Maps, Google Maps, on the screen here, right next to my speed, right next to my power levels and everything. That's a huge win there. I love that. And then, of course, here, you cannot miss it, 12.3-inch touchscreen display, Honda's biggest ever touchscreen. They answered me. My last video, I was just kind of more than anything perplexed that the old screen was tilted this way. It didn't make any sense to me. They fixed that. It's upright completely, and they moved all of your home and back buttons onto the screen itself. The only button we have here, yes, an analog volume knob, so that is there and easily controllable. And then, of course, we can display our power flow meter on the right there, as well as here in the center display. Now, with that infotainment system, Google is built in now. It is not, however, to the extent that Google is integrated in Volvo's new system. That entire system is an Android-based system. This is Honda's system, but it has a lot of Google functionality built in. So your voice commands are all done through Google Assistant. You have Google Maps, like I mentioned, which is incredibly responsive and intuitive here. It works very quickly. Of course, we still have Android Auto and Apple CarPlay standard. However, it is worthy to note, base model, it's wired. And of course, something I've never seen in a Honda before, you are able to open the Play Store, the Google Play Store, and download third-party apps, whether it be a podcast app or something different, onto your Honda. That is really cool. This is actually a great integration. It has not slowed down the infotainment at all. In fact, I feel like this works quicker than the previous generation. Yeah, it works well. I'm glad they haven't gone with some silly kind of dual mode system. I'm glad they haven't put a knob here to allow you to change that. It's close enough and it's not distracting at all. Here on the interior, we get a leather-wrapped steering wheel as standard, and then of course leather seating surfaces we get with the touring model. Great surfaces here, great materials. Love what Honda does on the interiors here, especially here in the Accord. Love that they spec this one all black. It's very simple. Everything's laid out logically, and it's just clean. It's basic, but at the same time, it still feels like a base entry-level luxury car. This is a very comfortable place to be as a daily driver. The seats, they've improved the seats absolutely. One thing to note though, however, is they've gotten rid of 2 of the lumbar adjustments. You cannot adjust your lumbar up and down. It's just 2-way instead of 4-way, which is a huge miss. And then here in the passenger seat, it doesn't have lumbar, first off, and you are not able to move it up and down. Not sure what's going on there. They did change this whole center console here. The wireless charging is easily accessible now. They had a kind of a cover, a tray, a sliding tray that would come down and hide your wireless charging. That's gone. It's cleaner here. A couple of things to note though. We go back to the rear seats, which do have adequate amount of leg room, 0.4 inches more from the outgoing model. As I mentioned, they got rid of the pocket, the storage pocket on my seat. That's cost cutting at its finest, I should say. And in the States, you guys, if you're into Sirius XM, they got rid of Sirius XM. So Honda says for this generation, they have tightened up chassis rigidity, and they've largely kept the suspension the same, although they have changed a few of the mounts on the front end as far as the dampers are concerned. As well, they've widened the front track width actually 0.4 inches. Now, something that I will note, and this appears to be the case, and Honda's kind of being a little bit hush-hush about this, Honda has taken away the adaptive dampers from the 10th generation Accord. Now, in my last review, I did mention that I didn't really notice a huge difference between comfort or normal and sport mode. It did make a little bit of a difference in stiffening up the chassis just a little bit. But as far as I know, they have gotten rid of the adaptive dampers. It's just one setting for all your drive modes, and it works here. They have increased that chassis rigidity and kind of dialed in the refinement a little bit. However, not totally noticeable unless you're really pushing the car, but the steering definitely feels a little bit smoother and it's a little bit heavier in sport mode. But as far as the ride quality goes, I just got out of the Hyundai Ioniq 6. I thought that rode okay. It wasn't until I got into this where I'm like, oh, this rides 100 times better than that car. And of course, that's one of the massive benefits of not being an EV, just being a hybrid. You can cut down on a little bit of that unnecessary weight. It is a little bit quieter in here too. You do actually get a different windshield, an acoustic windshield, Honda calls it, if you go with the top tier touring model, which quiets it down. One of the biggest things I noticed is how much quieter the engine actually is to the previous generation. I did mention that in my last review, that it hummed a little bit, especially when we were above kind of 50% throttle. Now, if you're in sport mode, it will on purpose tap in a little bit of artificial engine note into the cabin here for noise. But if you're in normal or eco, it's very quiet, it's very seamless here. And the changeover, as I mentioned in the new CR-V review, is a little bit smoother than the previous generation. Still not instantaneous. If you're going from EV to, let's say, 75% throttle in kind of a quick jab, you have to make a quick pass. There is a little bit of a delay there. Not huge though. Yeah, definitely some artificial engine notes coming in sport mode there. Brake-based torque vectoring going on with those front wheels. It handles well. It's not a sports sedan, but at the same time, it's not a luxury sedan. So there's still good kind of underlying Honda driving dynamics there. You really just got to squeeze them out. That's the real trick here. And I mean, I don't really miss the adaptive dampers. I didn't really notice a huge change last generation, and to me it's just like, okay, well, it's one less thing to go wrong down the road. Just made incremental tweaks to how the car feels. Very compliant, comfortable, but still with a little bit of an ability to push the car. Ride quality is great. I think that's one of the Accord's strong suits here. That and the way they've done the sound deadening and everything. So fuel economy, that's what you guys are here for. Accord hybrid, that's what we're all here for. Of course, you can compare it to the Camry and a few other of its competitors. Advertised, the ratings have gone up from 47 miles per gallon to 48 combined. And of course, combined, that translates from the previous model year, 5.5 liters per 100 kilometers. Now we're at 5.3 liters per 100 kilometers. I've been able to beat that fuel economy rating. Here we can look at my trip odometer since I've picked up the car. 330 kilometers I've driven. I've averaged 5.1 actually. And before this, that's only because I've been driving like a lunatic. Before this video, before today, when I've kind of been pushing the car a little bit, I was sitting between 4.9 and 5.0 liters per 100 kilometers. So beating out that EPA estimated fuel economy range. And that's completely a mix of freeway driving, city driving, just kind of cruising like this. We're not using any fuel at the current moment. So definitely a very fuel efficient vehicle. I love these self-contained hybrids. I don't want Honda to go to a plug-in hybrid setup. I really don't want that to happen. Anyways, you guys, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. We'll be back with a few other videos, and I mean, just really great cars coming up and some experiences that I think I really want to share with you guys. So stick around if you'd like. Subscribe if you haven't already. You can find me on Instagram at Untraveled. We'll see you next time.